I'd do. I'd knock out the capital and I'd knock it out big and strong. I'd take over the oil and I'd keep the oil.
All right,
That's
so
what
you
I'd
do that with ground, you need ground troops.
And I would stay in that jail for 3 years.
Right, but you need ground troops to do that?
You'll need some ground troops, yeah. You'll need ground troops.
But so how many troops? 10,000 maybe? Or would you support 10,000 ground troops?
Yes, I would.
Joining us now are Nafees Hamid. He's a research fellow at Artis International, and Scott Atran, director of research at France's National Center for Scientific Research and a senior fellow at Artis International. They are both the authors of the piece, The War ISIS Wants. That's a New York Review of Books. What was your reaction, what has been your general reaction, Nafees Hamid, to Donald Trump's rhetoric, and especially his rhetoric lately about banning all Muslims coming into the United States?
I mean, this is falling perfectly within the ISIS trap. Earlier this year, their English language magazine, Tabik, they wrote an article called The Extinction of the Gray Zone. And for them, the gray zone is where most Muslims and most people, even non-Muslims, if they're willing to budge a little bit, sit. And that's, you have the infidels on one end, and you have people like ISIS on the other end. And the goal is to try to extinguish that gray zone. And the way that they want to do it is to create chaos in Western societies, basically to convince Muslims where they are in Europe or in the United States that they're not welcome there, that you can't live in the land of infidels, you will never be treated fairly, they will persecute you. And so they want to carry out attacks, and there's this tacit alliance between certain more nationalist right-wing groups, especially in Europe, and these jihadist fighters, specifically ISIS. And as these groups get more popularity and they tighten up their borders and the anti-Muslim rhetoric increases, this increases the marginalization that Muslims feel. And what ISIS hopes is that they will come and join the caliphate.
Well, let me just explore what you meant by the gray zone. Let me see if I got it. It's that area of religious life where someone doesn't accept every little thing in the most extreme orthodox interpretation of it, and yet is not an opponent of the religion. I mean, to put it in Catholic terms, we see in America, in polling, that Catholics in America poll equally in favor of abortion as the rest of the population, which is to say most Catholics in America are ignoring the Catholic teachings on abortion, and they still consider themselves Catholics. Is that sort of the gray zone of religion you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. They're not really necessarily for everything that the West stands for, but they're also not necessarily jihadists, Salafists like ISIS. They're somewhere in between this sort of this moral ambiguous area that they're in, and the goal is to kind of make them get off the fence and to fall onto the side of the jihadists.
Let's listen to what Ted Cruz said about how he would approach ISIS.
We will utterly destroy ISIS. We will carpet bomb them into oblivion. I don't know if sand can glow in the dark, but we're going to find out.
Now, I don't think Ted Cruz knows that carpet bombing is a war crime, but even if he did, I think he would still say it because, Scott, he doesn't want to be caught saying he's going to send in a lot of ground troops over there. He wants to tell audiences, we can just carpet bomb this whole problem away.
Yeah, well, that's a sort of moronic response. I mean, if you look at the history of aerial bombardments, it usually moves populations to support the regime, whatever it is. And ISIS is very peculiar. It's a semi-nomadic regime. It has no real infrastructure. So who are you going to bomb? You're going to bomb the people who'd like to get away from ISIS and now must seek their protection? Or you're going to bomb the people who could possibly help us in these urban areas to fight ISIS? So the whole idea that you're going to bomb, basically what you'll do is, send a missile up a camel's ass and get nowhere, except to increase support for the Islamic State.
I want to read something that you wrote in your piece. You said that the group bases its ideology on prophetic texts stating that Islam will be victorious after an apocalyptic battle to be set off once Western armies come to the region. Should that invasion happen, the Islamic State not only would be able to declare its prophecy fulfilled, but they could also turn as a part of a new recruiting drive. I'm sorry, and this is from the New York Times. Actually, it's not from your piece, but you've been saying exactly this kind of thing about the prophetic texts. Scott, what about if the ground troops go in there and they were to succeed? Wouldn't that prove the prophetic texts wrong?
Yes, if they were to succeed. But look what we did in Iraq. Look, in Iraq we had its precursor, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Mesopotamia. We got rid of 70 to 80% of their foot soldiers and knocked off 10 to 15 high-value targets every month for 15 consecutive months. They moved into Syria. They easily took over basically the rebellion there. They were the best organized group. And they came back with a vengeance. And besides, even if we got rid of them in Iraq and Syria, they're now in the Sahel and the Sahara. That's 3 to 4 million square miles where they're running around trying to organize, and with quite a bit of success that no one's really paying attention to.
So, Nafees Hamid, so what is the smart war on ISIS?
I mean, first of all, the existence of the caliphate, the fact that they have control over that land, does give them an incredible degree of attraction to people who want to join them. So the idea of removing that land, removing their ability to control that area, is not only a good thing in terms of freeing up those people who are currently living in that territory and removing one of their bases from which they can plan attacks on us, but it would go a long way in terms of reducing their attraction. But it cannot be Western soldiers on the ground. That would just be playing into ISIS's hands. They want to frame this as a war as the West versus Islam, and so far they have not been as successful as that at bringing Western troops into the ground. And so militias, Syrian rebel forces need to do the fighting. Kurdish fighters need to do the fighting. If we can get Sunni Muslim countries to go into those territories, that would work as well, with Western nations providing intelligence and air fire and financing as well.
Well, one of the newer
But that's in the
things
short run.
about
In
this.
the long run, we also need to work.
We're going to take a quick break right here. We're going to come right back and talk and finish that point, and also talk about the Islamic State's new smartphone app. We will be right back.
Okay,